Good morning and welcome to the OBX Wave Report for today. Let's see, it is Monday, January the 9th, and here we are at the OBX Wave Report where we do discuss all things waves, weather, climate, and beach lifestyle. And I did want to give a shout out to Kat here who made this really, really yummy kale, spinach, kale, celery, uh, spinach, and an apple breakfast drink. It's like a little power breakfast drink for wave riding. So kale, celery, spinach, and an apple. So good stuff. You get your veggies, you get a little bit of a fruit here, like healthy fruit, and you get that nice little, you know, non-caffeine energy kick. Although we do have our traditional yummy coffee here too as well. So we're just getting all the good stuff this morning here on the OBX Wave Report. And I thought I would just mention that I've been researching waves and wave riding from like one of the professionals out here on the YouTube's Kale Broccoli. He's a really fun guy to watch. Seems like a really nice guy and has some wonderful tips for us intermediate surfers and those of us actually like for me getting back seriously into surfing after years of being a pretty intermittent surfer and learning about all the new things like the new board types. I mean like I'm used to surfing the pointy nose boards with glassed in fins and so like my methods for surfing and like board positioning and all of that are like kind of I guess based on um, like an older understanding of surfing, and now there's just so many options, particularly even with a single board, because you can get a single board and then you have like all these fin options for like changing out the fins, and then also the new boards they have just so many new features like the way the bottom of the board is managed. Particularly it's not clearly the bottoms of boards in the past did have some shaping, but they primarily focused on rocker. And now of course rocker is still an element, but a lot of boards now have various different um, kinds of innovative designs with concaves or even channels. And the tail designs for boards have changed a lot. Like my new board has a tail that's like really wide, but also is kind of like this hybrid pin squash wing thing. It's like I don't know if people call it a bat wing, but it's like it's the Lost Rocket Redux, and its tail is kind of shaped like a V, a little like a squashed V, and then it's got these little wings at the end of the tail rather than in the end of the board. I had an old board back in the 80s and 90s that was like a double wing pintail, which was like a super fast and crazy loose board, like down the face of the wave, super fast, crazy loose. Paddle power for that board was um, pretty bad. I mean, it was a short board. It was ultralight. It was like about 5'7", and so I had to like get in the perfect position on the wave and then launch. And had all these various tricks that I use. I kind of like kind of sit up on the board, dig the tail in. Right before the wave, do a little flip forward and kick, and then you had to kind of like push down on the nose of the board as you paddle like hell to get into the thing. And then when you finally caught the wave, then the speed kicked in and you get like, crazy drive down the wave. And I mean, you kind of lean and the thing would just turn like crazy. And it was kind of like riding a bucking bronco, but it was fun. It was a fun board. Um, yeah, the Lost Rocket Redux is a little different. I feel like it's kind of similar right now, at least in the sense of like catching waves. I do have to be in a good spot for it. I do have to like push down like on the face. It's not as hard to catch waves as like that short board was, but it's still kind of like sticky when it comes to like paddling, and I can feel the drag in the back. In all honesty, I think it has something to do with the fins. I have Performer fins from FCS, and they're a large size. Right now they're in the thruster configuration. I'm gonna switch them out. We're gonna try the quad configuration, and I'm gonna give you guys some feedback on how things work with the Lost Rocket Redux and various different fin configurations, and talk more about the fins. But what I've been doing personally is like researching, boards and fins and like how to use the fins and like sweet spot positioning on the boards for these new like wider boards that are still kind of short. Mine's a 6'1", so it's kind of a short board, but it's not like crazy short. It's like 39.5 liters. But we're going to see what we can do to like optimize. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Kale Broccoli because I've just been learning a lot from his YouTube videos and his various surfing methodologies, and teaching surfing has been very helpful to me. I'm not a beginner surfer. I've been surfing all my life, but having everything laid out in a more, I don't know if the word is scientific fashion, but it's kind of like a more direct teaching fashion than typically you would experience um, for surfing. Oftentimes, surfing is kind of like a trial and error kind of thing. You go out there, you try one thing, boom, it doesn't work, then you have to try another thing, and so as you kind of kook out or fail forward, with surfing, and then so you kind of learn by failure. And that's honestly not necessarily a bad way to learn, but if you can learn from other people's failures, or you can learn from other people's experience, then that's good. That you can not have so much in the way of failures. And I mean, I think that like in the past, my surfing level probably was close to advanced. But if you go through a period of time where you're only surfing intermittently, your skills degrade just like with anything else. And so right now, I am getting back into it and trying to get my skill level back up, and then also incorporate all the new knowledge. And boy, is there a lot of new knowledge. It's not as anecdotal and like surfer kind of bro oriented as it used to be. There's a lot of like really helpful surfers out there, and the community has become much more open as far as sharing knowledge and information. And I find this to be really liberating. This is fantastic. And I did want to mention Kale, but just generally speaking, there seems to be kind of an enlightenment ongoing for the surf scene, less surfer broism and more of just kind of a community of people who love surfing, who love waves, who enjoy the art and the sport of surfing, and have kind of a more open attitude rather than like a competitive, kind of rat race, kind of attitude. And I think that's actually really good, considering the fact that there's more surfers out there, beaches are getting more crowded. Um, we could use a lot more in the way of cooperation and acceptance of one another and looking out for one another, in the water and onshore, particularly as things change in the environment, as we go out into the oceans that are more, in many cases more riled up by the storms of climate change. So I guess in a lot of cases we're looking at bigger waves as surfers, or and in a way I don't know that from a surfing standpoint, I mean there's always this allure to big waves, but of course big waves are dangerous, and we're also like seeing more, I guess, innovation and exploration in the field of waves. I mean, we've got pull-ins, with jet skis on these giant waves in these breaks around the world that people are discovering that are really going off. And it's not just, I mean, don't get me wrong, Hawaii and pipeline and all of that is like still kind of central to surfing, but there's so many places to go far afield to look for different kinds of waves, and of course not just the extreme waves, but also for the more rideable, more kind waves. So it's just very exciting. It's almost like there's this massive renaissance going on in surfing and the attitude that surrounds surfing and in the surfing community, and that's just a wonderful thing for me to experience. So I'm going to drink a a kale, celery, green spinach, apple, and I don't know, maybe we'll add a broccoli to the beverage one of these mornings. Toast to the surfing renaissance and the evolving awareness of surfers and the expanding community, and surfers who, like me, are taking action to defend our coastlines and defend the climate, even as we enjoy our lovely beaches. So cheers to surfing. All right, so long introduction for the OBX wave report this morning, but so we're going to get down to it. We're going to do the things where we talk about waves and weather and climate and all the crazy stuff that's going on both here in the Outer Banks and in the lower 48 states and across the North Atlantic. That's like kind of the region that we're focusing on. If there's anything really crazy to report, like somewhere around the world, I might go further afield. But the home base here is in the Outer Banks, and the region that we're going to focus on is the lower 48 and the North Atlantic. And right now, for the lower 48, the Outer Banks region is, still remains pretty calm, although we have had a stormy impulse come through. And right now the clouds are pretty dark out here in Manio, which is my home base. And there's probably looks like a little light rain coming down. These clouds are expected to sweep out and clear out over the course of the day and into the afternoon and transition to like more partly cloudy conditions. Temperatures here are in the range of the upper 40s and lower 50s, and wave conditions across the Outer Banks are 1 to 4 feet, with 1 to 2 foot waves in the more northerly beaches, 2 to 3 foot waves in the south-facing beaches, and the big wave spot for the Outer Banks, Buxton, is again the outlier for today at 3 to 4 feet. So nothing too crazy for the Outer Banks right now, but rideable waves. Um, and the waves coming up a little bit from the weekend where we had some really flat conditions, particularly on Saturday. So that's what we're looking at for the Outer Banks. For the West Coast, we're still continuing to see major storms impacting California. We're going to talk about that in a special edition. And for Ireland, we continue to see a succession of storms coming in for Ireland and the UK. They're really kicking up the surf, particularly off Ireland. And I did find an individual on Twitter who was taking some shots of some really big waves out there just off of Ireland, and I'll highlight that. I mean, this person has like a few posts, and so must be very new to Twitter. But I did want to give a shout out. I believe it is to Paul, and I'm going to show you some shots of that in a special report that is going to be an addendum to this, I guess, central flagship. I don't know what you want to call it, wave report. This live stream thing is kind of cool because you can sit around and blither about stuff. And yeah, it's not necessarily as focused as like a feature, organized thing. I of course I organize the information I want to look at prior, but it's not as crazy like super focused, which is kind of fun, but you're going to have to bear with me a little bit as we just look at all the various different things. So this is the satellite shot for the lower 48. Of course, you can see the storm impacting the US West, and you can see the storm that right now is exiting the Outer Banks. This is a very mild system, nothing really big here in the Outer Banks, but it is heading offshore, bringing in cooler and clearer conditions. It looks like things are going to warm up throughout the week, and things are going to pump up a little bit on Friday, particularly as we get a big storm, kind of a frontal system coming in here. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the infrared satellite so that we can get some clearer shots. You can see the storm exiting the East Coast and bringing with it the rainy conditions that we've seen here in the Outer Banks. And you can see this big old storm out west that's slamming into California right now. I've heard reports, and we're going to do a little special report, but I've heard reports that some of the mountain regions could get 5 feet of snow. That's just nuts. And then some of the coastal regions are expected to get upwards of 1 inch per hour of rainfall, ranging from like looks like 3 to 4 inches, possibly as much as 5 inches, just with this one storm system. And California has been also getting hit with a series of storm after storm after storm. And there might be a little bit of a climate imprint on this system. I'm going to leave that to the climate experts, but it is worth noting that the northern Pacific, particularly, is much warmer than normal. And so that might be providing some extra fuel for these storms, which I'd be interested to see what experts like Dr. Michael Mann have to say, or I don't know, some of the Daniel Swain, who's a climatologist who does a lot of work in the particularly the Pacific and West region on issues of climate impacts to rainfall, drought. Um, I believe he does some work on reservoirs, but you guys are going to have to correct me if I'm wrong, like just predicting potential climate impacts to reservoirs. And I believe he also recently did a very interesting report on the potential for atmospheric river impacts to California related to climate change. So please listen to our climate scientists. They are right out there on the front lines of climate science, which is a cutting edge science right now. And it is essential that we stay informed as conditions do change. And there is certainly a difference between weather and climate. Weather being what's happening day to day, and climate being like your averaged conditions over traditionally about 30 years. Um, but one affects the other. And if the climate is changing, then the weather conditions can get a little bit gnarly out there. So please listen to both your weather experts and your climate experts. It's going to be essential going forward that we stay in tune with the science and inform ourselves, and become fact-based creatures that because we can't really rely on mysticism and fear and reaction and superstition as things start to change. We need to, like the surfers do, we need to learn what works and make adjustments and then do the things that do work. And you can't do that without having the knowledge. And sometimes, like surfing, you get the knowledge by falling off, getting you know put through the washing machine cycle, getting the beat down, and you're like, okay, that was bad. I did the thing that gave me the beat down. How can I change that? And that, in a way, that's dealing with facts. I mean, the fact was, you did the thing that gave you the beat down, and facts can be hard. No one likes the beat down, but you got to deal with the facts. That's just part of life, and it's a part of maturity. It's a part of growth, and in all honesty, it's enlightenment. So yeah, listen to the climate scientists, please. So, so for California, yeah, we're getting a little bit of the beat down again with some heavy rain and severe effects that may be linked to climate change. Listen to your climate scientists, please. Um, and then going back to the Outer Banks, I do want to talk about the near coast conditions when it comes to wave heights. And offshore, the waves are a little bit taller, ranging around 4.5 feet south. Let's make sure I am on the right timestamp here. 1 second. Boop. Yep, we are on the right timestamp. I was looking ahead a little bit in some of these models to see what the waves were expected to do. This is an Earth null school model. And I did also use tropical tidbits for our infrared satellite shots. So please go ahead and get over to tropical tidbits. Check it out. Check out Levi Cohen, who is also a specialist who focuses on the tropics, major expert. Check him out. All right. So yeah, we're back at Earth null school here, and and this is a wave model. And we're looking at the wave models, and right now it looks like the near coastal conditions for the Outer Banks in the south are about 4.5 foot wave height, so 4 to 5 foot wave height south, And then north, 3.5 foot wave heights. Ooh, just offshore here, about 5 foot. I guess that's why we're getting big waves over at Buxton, because we've got this south swell that has some nice open water, and it's getting a wrap around, just slamming on into Buxton for those 3 to 4 foot waves on the coast there. So yeah, in the near offshore environment, looks like 3 to 5 foot waves offshore. This is a bit taller than it has been, and the swell predominantly is coming in from the south and then angling in toward the coast. Looking at our spots, and I've already talked about this, we're using Google Maps here for informational purposes. So go ahead and check out Google Maps for your information for all the things that you need maps for. And we're going to start out with Jeanette's Pier, where the waves are 2 to 4 feet. I'm sorry, not 2 to 4 feet, 1 to 2 feet, not 2 to 4 feet. That would be a lot better. So to be crystal clear, waves at Jeanette's Pier right now are 1 to 2 feet, with a primary swell coming in at 9 seconds and a secondary swell coming in at 7 seconds. Winds are out of the northwest at 13 miles per hour, which is an offshore flow. Air temperature is 49 degrees Fahrenheit, so upper 40s. Ocean water temperature is 55, a little bit warmer than the past couple of days. Still in the mid 50s. You're still going to need your cold weather protection, 3-4 millimeter wetsuit, hoodie, booties, the whole 9 yards if you want to stay warm. If you want to go out there and freeze your tail off, you can go out in the 2-3 millimeter wetsuit like me without hoodie or booties. I'm getting some more cold weather protection. I want more cold weather protection. We're gonna put our we're gonna get our cold weather protection gear a little bit, more up to snuff. But yeah, please maintain your cold weather protection out there at Jeanette's Pier, unless you're some kind of crazy polar bear type. Weather conditions are cloudy, and this is expected to transition to partly cloudy over the day, and the highs are in the upper 40s, lower 50s down there at Jeanette's Pier. Moving on south to Rodanth, I'm still trying to figure out whether you say Rodanth or Rodanthony. We've got like locals, some locals like me who grew up in Virginia Beach that call it Rodanthony, some people that call it Rodanth, but I don't know. But we're going to go down to the Rodanth or Rodanthony Pier, and the waves down there are 1 to 2 feet. I had a nice surf session there like some days ago. Right now, waves are much smaller than they were when I was out. But yeah, so 1 to 2 foot waves at Rodanth. Um, and the primary swell is coming in at 10 seconds with a secondary swell coming in at 6 seconds. Winds are extraordinarily strong out of the northwest at 26 miles per hour coming in on the backside of that weather system that's moving on through. And this is offshore. This is strong. This might even be blowing out those waves a bit, um, or at least making them very hollow. Air temperatures are in the range of about 50 degrees Fahrenheit down there at Rodanth, and the ocean water temperatures are warmer at 58 degrees, but colder than it was when I was down there last. We had ocean water temperatures in the mid 60s when I was last down there. So take care of your cold weather protection. Ocean temperatures are dropping a bit at Rodanth over, for the past 2 week time frame, and weather conditions are we're expecting gradual clearing. Right now, conditions are cloudy, but we're expecting gradual clearing to partly cloudy conditions later on today. And the high temperature is likely to be in the lower 50s. And then moving on down to our last location, we're going to stay on the east facing beaches, and we're going to go down to Buxton, big old Buxton, which we've been already talking about a little bit today. And so we're going to go down to Buxton down here, and the east facing beaches here at Buxton, where the waves are coming in right now at 3 to 4 feet. So this is the big wave spot for the Outer Banks today. Although 3 to 4 feet is not huge, it's definitely not something to shake a stick at. And those waves are coming in, the larger swells are coming in with a 7 second period. Winds are out of the northwest at 21 miles per hour, so pretty strong flow there, offshore flow, with those northwest winds cutting in a little bit of an angle. Air temperatures are in the range of 52 degrees Fahrenheit, ocean water temperature 63, so warmer down there, but still cold enough to need your wetsuits. And then weather conditions are also cloudy, and they're expected to transition to partly cloudy over the course of the day with highs in the lower 50s. So there's your roundup for 3 select locations across the Outer Banks, waves across the Outer Banks ranging from 1 to 4 feet, with Buxton as your big wave location. And then I will just give a little shout out to Billy Mitchell and Frisco right now that are experiencing 2 to 3 wave height conditions. So if you want south facing beaches, your south facing beaches here along Hatteras Island are experiencing 2 to 3 foot waves. All right, so going out to back out to the larger picture for the lower 48 and looking at your 8 to 14 day outlook, we're going to focus in on the Outer Banks, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some national weather. It's worth noting that air temperatures are expected to be above normal for the U.S. East to far above normal conditions, ranging for a big swath of the U.S. East. Here in the Outer Banks, we're expecting above normal conditions over the 8 to 14 day time period. So temperatures are going to trend warmer here according to the Climate Prediction Center here at the National Weather Service. So expect a warm up here for the Outer Banks. Conditions out west are expected to be near normal to below normal, with storm systems continuing to sweep into the U.S. West. Precipitation. And I do want to mention the overall precipitation outlook is expected to be above normal for the U.S., which means generally stormier conditions, but nothing too crazy for most of the U.S. in the outlook, with the exception of Northern California and Southern Oregon, which is expected to continue to see a series of storms slamming into the West Coast with above normal precipitation. Now, it is worth noting that in the 8 to 14 day outlook, precipitation amounts are seem to be trending a little bit lower, but this is still an above normal potential for the U.S. West Coast. So we're just going to highlight that. And it does seem that at least for the next week or so, conditions are likely to remain to be pretty extreme for parts of California. Although in some of the longer range models, it does look like the storm track might shift to the north. You can kind of take those predictions with a grain of salt. We'll see what happens in any case. So above normal precipitation expected for the U.S. West Coast. And I'm just going to show you a global forecast system model to give you guys an idea what to expect for the U.S. So we see this system sweeping out of the Outer Banks here, and stormy conditions continuing to affect the West Coast. The primary impulse for the West Coast right now is really strong, and as we talked about earlier, with heavy precipitation amounts expected both for some coastal regions and for the mountain regions, which with just this impulse are expected to see about 5 feet of snow for some locations. I'm going to get into the California storm more on a special report. And then for the Outer Banks, we see the storm system sweep on off. Multiple impulses continue to interact with the U.S. West Coast throughout the week, as by Friday we see a strong frontal system, pretty strong frontal system, pushing in through the U.S. East, which for the Outer Banks is expected to pump up the surf in the 7 to 9 foot range in the near offshore environment. We'll see how that translates to the coastlines by the time we get up into Friday. And then just generally speaking, the U.S. is expected to continue to see these storms hitting the West Coast, with the occasional frontal system firing off for the U.S. East as these impulses continue. And so that's just a general picture. And then I did also want to show you the model forecast for the North Atlantic. And right now we have a powerful storm system just south and east of Greenland that's about to impact Ireland and the UK. And we'll just go ahead and run these models so you can see this progression of storms. So yeah, one strong storm impacting Ireland and the UK for early week, and then another one rushing in through later week. These are in the 960s to 970 millibar range, so nothing too crazy as far as depth of storms, but still pretty strong gales sweeping in. And then, yeah, and we continue to see some powerful gales. Later on in the model, we have a very strong high pressure ridge that begins to develop south of Iceland, well south of Iceland, east of I'd say France and Spain here. And the strong high uh, does pack some, looks like packing some very tight isobars here. So the onshore flow here in Ireland, particularly, and the near gale force to gale force conditions looks like it's expected to continue through multiple weeks, with these storms kind of now cycling around a powerful high. Of course, this is long, this is longer term in the model, so we can take it more and more with a grain of salt. But it is worth noting the location of that high and the strength of it, um, in the later portion of the models. It does tend to weaken toward the end. And toward the end, we do tend to get like more of a ridge by mid to late January in the North Atlantic, which looks like it would tend to push the storms more to the north, where we might see some interactions with Greenland and the Arctic. And we'll take a look at that maybe later. I don't know. I might take a look at that soon because the Arctic is interesting. It is very interesting. Okay, and yeah. So we have more ridging later on in the model. So looks like Ireland and the UK is expected to experience storms at least for the next week, and then ridging is starting to come into the models. And these are, of course, longer term predictions. So likely a little less accurate, but something to watch. And then I did want to talk about this near coastal system that is predicted to run in through Friday the 13th, for the Outer Banks. So we get the frontal storm kind of thing with strong southerly winds in the near gale force range off the south beaches, and then wave heights in the near coastal environment kicking up to 8 to 10 foot in the significant wave heights for the south beaches, and then looks like 7 to 9 feet in the near coastal waters just offshore of the Outer Banks, in association with this frontal system. It is worth noting that the frontal system sweeps off pretty quick on Friday, and the wave conditions do tamp down relatively quickly as we head on into Saturday in the more 5 to 6 foot range. So wave conditions across the Outer Banks right now, 1 to 4 feet. These conditions are likely to persist throughout the week until we get to the end, when there is a frontal system that is expected to pump the waves up. And then the main weather areas of interest as far as big waves and potential climate influences are the US West Coast and Ireland. And we're going to do some special reports on them